G'day everybody, my name is Elliot Waters and you're listening to the Dysregulated podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. So today's episode, I've got some bad news. We've definitely swung back to a depressive episode, a depressive mood, a low mood, and there's a bit of anxiety thrown in as well. I'll try and explain how we got to this point as best I can. So previously, the last couple of weeks, I've probably been a little bit manic without realising it. That's the problem, you know. Sometimes you're manic, but you don't really realise it. But I look at my bank account and I think, okay, we've been spending a lot of money on impulsive purchases, you know, and then I think of some of the sleepless sort of nights, you know, running on zero energy. Well, not zero energy, running on zero sleep, but still having all this energy. So there's a few things which tell me not a complete manic episode by any means, but at the same time, elevated mood and a little bit too much because there's some consequences that have happened because of it, which is in part the whole money thing, like I just mentioned, but also what goes up must come down. And we have now well and truly swung back into the low mood, depressive mood, sort of anxious state, which to be honest, I'm pretty used to. But you know, I always get out of these states and say I get to the sort of elevated mood thing. I always kid myself and think, all right, I think we're cured. This is it. We're going to stay like this forever now. Life's good. We're all sweet. And this is a trap that a lot of people with bipolar disorder in particular fall into because, you know, me also having bipolar, we believe, or at least this is my summation, that when we're in our more manic episodes with the elevated mood, we have that thinking, like I just said, that everything's all good. And the problem is a lot of people will then go off the medication because they don't need it anymore because things are going great. And going off the medication can cause some big swings back to the negative, which is where a lot of these problems then continue to manifest. And back on medication we go and we do the whole cycle all over again. So I've definitely been in a little bit. Now, when I say elevated mood, it's not that simple. It was more of a, looking back, an agitated sort of mood. So I wouldn't say that I was, you know, high-fiving everyone on the street and fist pumping and saying, yep, this is great, how good's life. But at the same time, I had a lot of that energy and sort of, I had a bit more belief, I suppose, as well, which is really addictive, that sort of feeling. And you try and keep it going as long as you can. But unfortunately, that all things, like I said, all things that go up, must come down as well. So here we are, we've slammed back to earth, that's for sure. It all started really, this agitated sort of mood, or the positive, then swung to an agitated sort of BPD episode. So all of a sudden, and these BPD episodes are scary, and I'll tell you why. Because when you're depressed, when you're really depressed in the hole, you know, a lot of people have suicidal ideation and be thinking about suicide, even come up with a plan. But because you're so depressed and anxious, you don't actually have the ability to sort of get up and carry it out often. And that's why antidepressants are you've got to be careful with antidepressants and people who are in the hole, because what antidepressants do tend to give you energy first off. And then that energy, if it's with someone who is very suicidal, can be enough to then cause them to do something. So that's why with SSRIs, SNRIs, got to be very careful, because there is that period when energy levels start to increase, which is great, but so does the ability to carry out whatever plan someone may be thinking of. So there you go. I'm going to do more on that down the track, because that's a sort of a big topic, that one there. But so for me, I swung from this sort of elevated mood to this agitated sort of depression, very BPD. And a lot of it's centered again on self-esteem and, you know, my place in the social world and you know, am I going to be alone forever? All those sorts of things, those constant ruminations. So when I'm in the elevated mood, those ruminations are there as well, but they're sort of dialed down a bit. But when we swing to these depressive episodes, the dial is turned way up. And all I can hear is, you're going to be alone forever. You're defective, you know, you're not good looking, you're not smart enough, you're not, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to go through all of it, but, you know, that inner critic sort of stuff all of a sudden is very, very loud, and it's very hard to block out. So I had this so about probably a week ago, 7 days ago, I had, and then for the next 5 days from then, if that makes sense, was this real sort of BPD sort of episode. But yesterday and today, we've now swung further towards the depression side of things. So the BPD sort of self-esteem and all those ruminations are still there, but now we're going into a real depressed sort of mode, which is where there's not much energy. You know, I find it difficult to engage in tasks and things that I should be doing. This episode, for example, has taken a while to get out there because, you know, I'm not in the mood really to do an episode because we are feeling so down. But I guess this is testament to me and my resilience and the fact that I'm recording it anyway, which is great. Now, if we went back a few months and I was in this sort of depressive mode, there is no chance that I would be doing an episode here today. So this is a real good piece of evidence that I can use to throw back against those negative thoughts. And what I am going to also do, hopefully shortly, is go for a run, even though it's so hot here in Australia, in Newcastle at the moment in particular. It's boiling and it's humid, but at the same time, it builds character, this sort of stuff. So I'm really going to try and go for a run and go to the gym today. It's only morning, so there's plenty of time, and try and pull up out of this depressive sort of episode. Just try and pull up and get back to some sort of level ground. So it's tough, it's really tough. The last couple of days have been really, really bad. I can't, sort of deny it. They've been really bad. And in a lot of ways, in the past, again, I would have probably ended up in hospital, and I've been able to avoid that, which is great. But man, when these ruminations really kick off, fueled by BPD in particular, like, it's scary. And BPD is scary because you have all those negative sort of emotions like you do when you're depressed, but you've got this energy because your emotions are running so high. And that is also why BPD has such a high rate of like self-harm and suicide attempts and all that sort of stuff, because the energy's there and it's a really agitated, negative, it's like a fire that burns within. And it certainly does. Like, my brain feels like it's on fire when I'm in these BPD episodes and I'm really getting hammered with certain ruminations, certain thought patterns or images in my head, whatever it may be. It feels like my brain is on fire. I can't stress that enough. It feels like my brain is on fire. And that's where you get very impulsive and you sort of want to act out because you've got all this energy and all this fire. It's like, I'll punch a wall because, I didn't punch a wall. But in the past, I probably have. But that's the thing. You punch the wall because you got all this energy, but it's negative. So you just want to lash out and sort of, start punching, or you drink too much, or you take drugs and just go crazy for a while. Like, I'm sort of getting into that BPD sort of feeling now. Can you hear it in my voice? Everything's sort of quickened up and there's a little bit more fire to my words as I'm talking now, I've noticed. But that's what happens, you get that real fire and it's like, all right, come on. Who's in my way? Get out of my way, like I've got these negative cognitions, but I want to rip them out and just belt the crap out of them. And that can be externalized and manifests itself in a lot of different ways in the real world, which, like I said, punching walls or yelling at people or, cutting people off in traffic and riding their ass. There's heaps of different ways in which these can manifest itself. So, it's really quite difficult. But as I said, the positive is I'm doing things to keep on track. And that's something that previously we would not have done. So if I've fallen now to our sort of lowest baseline, and I'm still able to do some, to do some actions and good behaviors, well, that's really, really promising because, it is these moments where in the past I've ended up in hospital and been reliant on certain medications to get through. Whereas this time we're choosing running, we're choosing the gym, reading, getting involved in some of the projects I'm working on. So that is all positive stuff. So anyway, that's the latest with me. That's the latest. It's been a pretty rough week, I'll tell you what. But we got through the BPD sort of part without any dramas. Nothing happened. It was all sweet. We just sort of rode the wave. And now we've plummeted a little bit further into that real depressive area where everything's slow, everything's black and grey, and it's just like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. So it's a very different manifestation of depression, the BPD low mood versus the depression low mood. Very different, although they do feed off the same sort of things. Anyway, so that's the latest from me. I hope that gives you a bit of insight. Things are pretty tough, but at the same time, we're pretty tough, like I'm it's like I'm Rocky, and I've got Apollo Creed, who is my depression, and I'm still up there, I'm still punching, so yeah, and that's another thing too. I've been rewatching Rocky again, which has been really good to sort of just focus and just, keep on punching. It's what it's all about. You just got to, doesn't matter how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And I've just been reminding myself of that constantly. Yep, we're taking shots, we're taking hits big time, there's our opposition, they've got some combos going and we're just eating it. But at the same time, we just keep pushing. And if we do so, I am pretty confident. I hope that we'll get on the other side of this sort of depressive mood and get back to some sort of stability and some normality as well, which would be amazing. All right, thank you everybody for listening, and I'll see you next time here, hopefully in a better mood on the Dysregulated podcast.